Hey everybody, welcome back to another Permaslug episode. My name is Jonathan, and obviously this episode is a bit different because you can see my face. I've had quite a few people ask me to include kind of the personal connection via the face cam here, so we're going to try this out. If you guys hate it, let me know, and we can try something else. But for the sake of this video, before we get started, I wanted to invite you to take this website design pricing survey that you're looking at on your screen. If you're in the Permaslug Facebook group, you've probably already seen this invitation, but basically, the idea with this survey is that I want to gather the voice of freelancers and agencies all over the world. I'm going to ask a series of questions, as you can see. First of all, where you're from, and then just different facts about your business, what your hourly rate is, minimum cost for website builds, a bunch of different questions about your website design business. And what I want to do is compile all this data together. We'll then be able to kind of compare notes and see how each other does it, and then kind of find the averages, and then I want to make some recommendations based on the data and just kind of talk through it. So I think this is going to be a really cool experiment. When I asked in the Facebook group if anybody had interest in video topics on like marketing and sales and that sort of thing, there was a resounding yes. So I'm hopeful that with this data, we can kind of start a series of videos on that. I have one already lined up for scoping a website project. We're going to talk about pricing because that's a big component of scoping, of course. So this is kind of the first layer in that series of marketing videos. So please take a look at this link in the description below. I'm not sure how long I'm going to keep it up, probably maybe 5 days or a week after this video goes live, but hopefully you can get a chance to take this. So jumping into the point of the video today is a question that popped up on the Permaslug forums. If you're already a member at Permaslug, you do have access to the forums. Anybody is welcome to read, but in order to post new threads or comments, you do need to have an active membership. This question right here is basically, how do you create a header on your Oxygen site where your logo is in the center and you have text links on either side? That is actually pretty simple to achieve on desktop, but where it starts to fall apart is on mobile, because if you think about the way that that row would collapse, you would have text links on top, you would have your logo in the middle, and then you would have more text links on the bottom. There's two different ways that you can go about setting it up so that that doesn't happen, and that is, basically organizing the divs in such a way that you can use reverse column layout, which I can show you. And then the other even more simple way is to have, if you have, let's say 3 text links on either side, you could basically set them to display none, to hide at a certain breakpoint, and then, have a modal or something else with like basic text links for your mobile menu. The modal approach would probably be my recommended method because it's so much more simple than the other way, but we'll walk through both. And so we can go ahead and just jump right into Oxygen here. So as you can see, I have this header builder currently with some basic text links. This is not using the normal Oxygen menu components just because I like to have that extra flexibility. I pretty much only use those menu components when I want the Pro menu for the slide-in menu and that sort of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just go ahead and pop in a section. I'm going to change the padding on the top and bottom to be more realistic, like a standard menu would have, 35 pixels of padding on the top and bottom. And then let's just go ahead and kind of steal our text links down into this section. So you would probably have it like this. You'd have home, about us, locations, something like that. And then you would have your logo, and then you would have these other links. Let's make it even on both sides. So contact us, buy now, and then what would another text link be? Like pricing maybe. Yeah, let's go with that. So of course you would want to change the item alignment to be horizontal, middle align, and then let's go like space around. So it's as simple as that to create kind of that centered logo in your header like this. But what I mentioned earlier is it starts to fall apart at the lower breakpoint. So probably at like less than 992, you would want it to start stacking for the sake of, the way these text links kind of sort of go double line. It doesn't look very good. So you would change your child element layout to stack vertically, but then you have this weird issue with text links on top of the logo, then more below it. So one thing that you can do is, like I said, basically utilizing a modal. So let's go back up to our desktop screen size real quick, and we're going to go to modal. Inside this, I'm basically just going to duplicate one of these text links. And for whatever reason, it's difficult to get something in the modal if there's not something already there. So I just pop in a text element, expand this, and then this text link, I'm going to basically just pop in here. The reason why I'm duplicating that one up there is because I already have a class called header links on this with my basic styling. So just for the sake of time, kind of re-adding that. Before I go crazy duplicating this a bunch of times into my modal, I'm going to add another class. We're going to call this header links mobile, and you'll see why in just a moment. So in my header links mobile class, I don't want that margin on the right-hand side that you can see exists right here. And that's, of course, because of the spacing between these other text links in the main menu. So I'm going to change this to 0 pixels of margin on the right side, and maybe let's go like 15 on the bottom. That may not actually be enough. Let's go 25. And that may be too much, but that's okay because we have a class. So we're going to duplicate this out. What is it? 6 times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we can take our modal, go to Content Styles, stack this vertically. We'll go center and middle align. And then on our modal here, let's go to the actual kind of size and spacing right here for the modal itself and add some padding. So now on this very last text link, we need to do just a couple of things. We don't need that margin on the bottom, so we're just going to change it on the ID of that text link to just 0. And then we'll just quickly go rename these text links. This is the downside of this particular method, is that you then have to update the text links in more than one place, which isn't really that big of a deal because this is really only going to be ideal for a menu that's not that big. So, I mean, if you're having to go update a few text links every now and again, that's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. Okay, so now we have the beginning of our modal set up, but what we need to do is have a trigger for our modal at the certain breakpoint. So what we're going to do is go back to our section. We're going to pop in an icon element. If you change the icon set to linear icon and then go to, I think it's just called menu. Yeah, there it is. Then you have this nice menu looking icon. Change that to 35 pixels and that's perfectly fine. So now what we're going to do is jump back to the modal, click the trigger option, go to show when user clicks element, trigger selector. We're going to go to that icon right there. And so now our modal is going to be triggered if someone clicks that little menu circle icon. But of course we don't need that on the desktop size. So at our all devices breakpoint, or screen width, I should say, the advanced tab, go to layout on this icon and just choose display none. And then we're going to drop down to like less than 992 and we're going to set this to flex so that it pops back up. Now again, we're still at our less than 992 breakpoint. So what I'm going to do is go to our header links right here, go to advanced layout and set these to display none. And then of course that disappeared the ones in our modal as well. So all we need to do is just go to their text links. Make sure you have the header links mobile class selected and go to advanced layout flex. And now what we have is the logo here with our modal activation little icon and then our modal with the basic text links in it. Of course, you'd probably want some margin beneath this. And at this breakpoint, you could even change this to stack horizontally. You probably want to go space between to push them out to the far edges like that. And then there was margin underneath that logo we can remove to make things kind of line up properly. So if we jump back up to the all devices, then you can see we have those text links there, and then less than 992, the text links go away, and we have our logo with our menu icon there. So let's save this and take a look on the front end real quick. So that looks perfectly reasonable. And then if we use the Chrome Inspect tool to drop down to, let's say like iPhone 6, 7, 8 Plus, then exactly what we just set up is ready to go. So click the little modal activation icon there, our little menu icon, and there is our text links set up and ready to go. With the modal, you can add the little close icon, but by default, it works just by closing, by clicking the background. So I think that's pretty intuitive because there's that dark area, but that is active and ready to go. Super simple. Let's go ahead and jump back over to our all devices screen width here in Oxygen, and I'll show you the other way that you can do this. Okay, so this next way is going to be a bit more complicated, and really there's no advantage to this except if you want all of the text links to be visible and you don't want them to be hidden in a modal like this. So what we're going to do is just effectively delete this modal. We don't need that anymore. And then in fact, I didn't realize my header builder still exists, but it's empty. So I'm just going to delete that. And then realistically, all we need to do is add in another section. I don't want that to be down at the bottom. I'll just pop that up top here. And I'm going to do the same thing, 35 pixels of padding on the top and bottom. So now what we're going to do is start adding some divs. So I'm going to add one div in here that is set to 100% width. Then inside of this div, we're going to add one that's 67% of the width of its container, like that. And then let me expand this a bit so you can see what I'm doing. In this main wrapper div, I'm going to add one more, and that one is going to be 33% width to take up the available space. So we're going to go wrapper, set this one to horizontal, and now those two divs fit side by side. So inside of this div here, we're going to add one more and just go ahead and put the div like that. You don't need to put anything inside of it. And then just so I can drag and drop, I'm going to add a simple text element in there. This becomes a little bit of divception, but I promise this is going to work out how we want it to. So I'm just basically going to rob the text links out of that menu we set up earlier, and then just delete that text element. Inside of this div right here, I'm going to pop in our image element. So I'm just going to take this and just throw it in there. So now we have our image and our div inside of this one here, as you can see. And let's just go ahead and set this one to stack horizontally. This div I want to be stacked horizontally as well. And then this one here, I want to stretch and then middle align. So now we have our text links kind of evenly with the menu, or excuse me, with the logo there. And then this we probably want to set to, I guess space between is probably going to be the best bet here. Or actually, you know what we can do instead of doing that is take the image, go to advanced, margin auto left and margin auto right, and that's going to push it to the middle of the available space that's left over after this, content there. Okay, so then in this div over here, we don't need to do anything special. Again, for the sake of drag and drop, I'm going to pop in a text element there, text link, and then we don't need the icon anymore, so I'll get rid of that. We also don't need this text element. Again, I'm going to set this to horizontal. Then we can go middle align, and that doesn't quite take up all the available space, so we can go back to our main div here and set that to stretch, and now everything is pushed into the middle. So that's roughly the same as what we had earlier. It's not quite spaced the same, but you could play with that kind of space around, space between alignment. You could define widths as well, and that would allow you to kind of control the spacing a bit better, but it does look perfectly reasonable. So at this point, we are going to have a bit of work to do on the mobile side of things, but it's really not that bad. If you go page container, that looks okay. Your text kind of starts to get a little bit compacted there. Maybe if you just dropped off some letters, then you could make it fit. That's up to you. You'd have to play with the spacing and kind of the text alignment there, but that is certainly doable as it was. The page container 1120 looks totally fine. So let's drop down to less than 992, and actually our class is still applied there. So let's go to our text link. Then we're going to go to layout and set this to flex instead of display none so that our text links come back. And as you can see, it does look pretty it looks pretty wonky because everything's starting to kind of bunch up together. So we're going to do two things. First of all, on this div here that wraps our first three text links and our image, what you can do with this div is at this breakpoint, go to advanced layout, and then you can set it to flex. Then you need to set the flex direction to row because we already have it in a row format like this, and then choose reverse. And now the logo is going to appear in front of those text links, unlike how we had it before where of course it was flipped. So at this point then you could start playing with this however you want. If it still fits in your opinion and you want it to look like that, of course keep it that way. But I'm going to set it to stack vertically. This case I'm going to set it to stack vertically as well. We'll go left align, and then we can take off the margin left auto here. We can just set that to 0 pixels, and let's go 15 pixels of margin on the bottom. I don't know if you would want it to be stacked with these text links kind of 3 by 3. You certainly could do that, but let's just say you want them to all be stacked in a line for whatever reason. It's very simple. You can just basically change your alignment to look like that. And so there you go. Now you have the logo up on the top, you have all your text links right below it, and everything's still accessible all the time, even in your mobile breakpoints. We'll jump back up to the all devices screen width, and sure enough, we still have our first three text links on the left side, logo in the middle, and the text links on the right. So like I said, this particular method is only going to be beneficial for you if you want to see the text links all the time. Maybe your use case does call for that. But I typically always go for the modal situation in a real use case, especially for like a small business when their website doesn't need to be super complicated. I just go for the modal pretty much always. I want to say thank you all for watching. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you, and I will look forward to seeing you in a future video. Thank you so much for watching.